I'm Vanessa Oakes, a part-time lecturer in the business school. I mostly teach on professional education programs, and my students tend to be developing practitioners in their field. For this presentation, I've examined how we can maximise the use of Twitter in an educational context. As a lecturer in professional education, it's very important to me that my students know what is happening in the wider world of work, that they develop channels for learning after they have finished studying with us, and that I've given them tools for lifelong learning. For this presentation, I focused on Twitter, not only because of the limited time and space available, but because of its many characteristics that lend itself so well to learning. Not much standalone research has been conducted on the effectiveness of serendipitous learning, but it is becoming more widely recognised as a learning method. However, its effectiveness remains difficult to measure. As part of this review, I've looked into how it fits within the wider context of learning, the advancement of the Internet and Web 2.0 technologies, and finally, how it relates to professional development. The concept of serendipitous learning has many commonalities with other forms of informal learning. It is generally perceived to be random, but our own personal goals and interests are a major influence in what we find. This generally results in our knowledge retention being high because the learning feels so personal to us. It's safe to say that it doesn't often just happen, and there is a large body of research dedicated to the intellectual readiness we need to have to make our discoveries meaningful. There is research to suggest that informal learning methods tend to be more effective at developing knowledge and skills. This research goes as far back as the 50s, with the development of cognitive theory, first identified by Jean Piaget, and social constructivism by Lev Vygotsky. Informal learning methods are also frequently in use in the workplace, as the results of this research by the CIPD suggests. 47% and 40% respectively of respondents rated informal learning methods as most effective. With the development of the Internet, we find ourselves in a new learning environment, seemingly characterised by a great deal of complexity. Being passive in our consumption of information will limit the growth of our own knowledge. It could be easy to try to minimise this extra noise, but it is becoming increasingly more effective to try to harness it instead, to improve the educational experiences of our students. Again, not much research has been conducted to support the effectiveness of informal learning in professional development, but some that has been conducted demonstrates that professionals value informal learning very highly. Recent anecdotal information suggests that professionals prefer to be in control of their own learning rather than be passive recipients through a process where someone else determines what their learning priorities are. Experts in many professions have embraced this new technology as a way to interact and learn from their peers. Things will never go back to the way they once were, so we need to find ways of moving forward. My findings are taken from the literature and presented in a Twitter feed style, with quotes attributed to the authors when necessary. The feeds highlight the main points briefly and succinctly, although unfortunately I didn't manage to make all these points in 140 characters or less. Serendipitous learning takes place when we explore information that is already created. It could strengthen our existing ideas or take us in a completely new direction. We decide what we learn, who we connect to, and what we do with that information, whether we keep it to ourselves, engage with it, or pass it on. As educators, we are no longer the only experts in our field that students have access to. Students surveyed on their use of Twitter reveal that enjoyment and serendipity feature highly in their learning priorities. If we're serious about developing professionals of the future, then we must take seriously our responsibility to develop the skills they will need to learn serendipitously. Students should be taught to make connections and to grow their own knowledge further by sharing these connections with others. Learning is about conversations. All students should be encouraged to develop a voice and participate in these conversations. Computers and web applications can only do so much to order and store information. The human intelligence that we bring means that we decide what's relevant to us. The concept of the social semantic web can sustain and foster serendipitous learning through its framework of searching, tagging, rating, and recommending. There are those who believe that it is down to luck, but some argue that a critical mass of information can be reached where serendipitous learning becomes highly likely. Of course, users may struggle to balance the promise of interesting content with the sheer volume of incoming tweets, but we should never consider this time wasted. Is Twitter the best at doing this? As mentioned previously, the three main characteristics of Twitter make it ideal as a tool for learning, facilitating social connections, knowledge transfer, and encouraging social expression. Serendipitous learning interests me because it is already a part of what I do. Before I started reading up on it, I wasn't even aware that what I was doing with my browsing was an actual learning thing. Now I realise that connecting with as many people as possible, through, through me, their interests become my learning, and when I engage with them, I learn more. Taking all of the literature into account, there are 5 main areas in which we should seek to improve our teaching practice. Number 1, embrace this new source of learning. Number 2, enhance our learning and teaching materials. Number 3, encourage our students to be participants in this learning. Number 4, develop their intellectual readiness for using the information that they find. Number 5, teach them to aim for continuous improvement of their ideas. Of course, the academic world would greatly benefit from more direct research into this topic. But as it stands at the moment, the evidence suggests that this is something we cannot ignore. Anything that encourages exploratory learning should be encouraged. That's all from me. Thank you for listening.